Hello, I'm Michael McHugh, Editor-in-Chief and creator of MiNDFOOD. We're creating a very special series working with our friends at Audi. It's all about change the world, not everyday life. It's a wonderful series where we're talking to a range of people about how you can make changes to the world you live in without having to change everyday life. It's a philosophy shared by Audi with their new hybrid electric vehicle, the A3 e-tron, a car set to change the way we drive. Today, our Associate Editor, Carolyn Enting, is talking to Joe Woods, who heads up the Sustainable Design team at EQ Building Workshop.
Hi, my name is Carolyn Enting. I'm Associate Editor of MiNDFOOD, and today we're having a chat with Joe Woods, who heads the Sustainable Design team at EQ Building Workshop. Welcome.
Thank you.
I understand you work a lot with zero energy buildings.
Yeah, I do. So the focus of my job is looking at sustainability in buildings. So energy efficiency, water efficiency, selection of materials, and I work on project teams just advising on some of those things.
That's fantastic. So now you grew up in Cornwall, England. How did your sort of childhood and upbringing sort of influence the work that you do now?
Living in the countryside, you see green trees, green everywhere. I really wanted to protect that, and I felt that was really important, so I decided that the only way I could really do that was by going into a career that involved protecting the environment around me and just making it nice for future generations.
So what sort of age did that sort of occur to you?
I guess quite young. My mum was always into doing things like recycling at home, so I kind of grew up with it. I don't really remember when I started thinking about it, but it was always part of everyday life.
You know, you had that bigger picture world view of making changes, you know, that affect the whole world.
Yeah.
You know, and instead of, you know, sometimes people think short term and go, oh well, you know, if I'm recycling, that's not really going to help because I'm only one person. It's
all about critical mass, really. It's all about getting more and more people to do it. Every little bit counts, and even if you can just do a little bit, that's enough. It's just whatever you can fit in your everyday life. Clearly
you're an ambassador for change. So what motivates you every day in your work?
At the moment, my daughter, I've got a 1-year-old daughter, and I want to create change for her so that I know she's going to grow up in a world that's still beautiful and green and healthy to live in.
And how do we build healthy homes that are healthy not only for us as human beings, but also for the environment and for the future of the world?
So it's probably worth relating that to the project that I've been working on. It's very close to my heart, is the Zero Energy House in Point Chev. So my partner and I decided to design and build our own house. So that house generates as much energy on site as it uses, which is where the Zero Energy House definition comes from. So we are energy neutral, basically. So although we take energy from the grid, we also provide energy to the grid and also use energy within our house that comes from our solar system. So over the course of a year, we have a neutral energy balance with the grid.
So how is it achievable? How did you achieve that? Have you got solar panels on the roof or?
So there's several features we put into our house, lots of energy efficiency features. So looking at the thermal envelope of the building, so the walls, the roof and the floor and the glazing, and making those as efficient as possible. So high levels of insulation, high performance glass. Looking at the lighting in the space, so it's all LED lighting. Choosing appliances that are really energy efficient, so Energy Star rated appliances. They're the ones to choose because they save you energy in the long run. And all those things together mean you have a very low energy use. And then whatever energy we do use, we create through photovoltaics, which are solar panels that create electricity from the sun.
And of course, you know, when you go shopping for home appliances as well, you know, often the ones with the big top Energy Star ratings are the more expensive appliances.
Although you're paying upfront costs, which are much greater than if you just bought a standard washing machine, for example, it's much cheaper to run that washing machine because it's using less energy. So if you have a look at a whole of life cost, it's going to save you money. It's not going to cost more than the standard washing machine.
And it's going to make you feel good every time you do a load of washing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have a dryer?
No, we don't actually. We just use a washing line.
No, it's actually How do you find the industry's attitude to change in terms of, you know, construction materials that they're using?
Industry's attitude varies. You get some people that really understand what you're doing and why, and they're really interested in doing it. And then I think it's the people that generally don't understand why it's important that aren't so interested. Auckland Council at the moment are doing a fantastic job on their new building. They've really pushed the boundaries on some of those sustainability things, and I'm sure they'll probably advertise that when they're ready. But they're also doing quite a lot on some of their new council libraries, like photovoltaics, some of the new buildings, and also electric car plug-in points. So, stuff's happening out there. It's just a case of getting into the public eye to show that, this can be done, and it can be cost effective.
That's great, because I was going to say, how do we spread the word to people who don't understand how?
Yeah, it's all about people that are already doing it, showing case studies about what they've done and why it's worked. And obviously with our Zero Energy House project, we've got a website which tells you all about that. It tells you what we've done in the design and why, and also how we've saved money in the long run. Although we've had upfront capital costs which are greater than a standard house, over the long term, we're going to actually save money with our house.
That's fantastic, because that was going to be one of my questions, was how, what's the cost up front? It's going to be more expensive, obviously, but the long-term vision, which have a greater impact on the world, is to make that investment up front.
Yeah.
But in the long term, it's a cheaper way forward as well.
Yeah.
So what is one simple change that people can do, if they're in a rented accommodation, they've got their own home that's already built, they can't afford to necessarily go and build a new house, or what one simple thing they can do?
Yeah, sure. So there's probably a couple. So looking at lighting, changing to low energy lighting. Some of those bulbs cost a little bit more upfront, but they save you quite a lot of money in the long run. And if you're in a rental, you can take those bulbs with you when you leave. And also appliances. So again, looking at those Energy Star rated appliances. Although again, a bigger upfront cost, you save money in the long run, and you can take those with you when you leave a rental. If you own your own home and you're looking at doing renovations, then looking at some of the materials, so low toxicity materials, it doesn't necessarily help the environment so much, but it helps your health.
And that's also important too, isn't it? I mean, from a social point of view, in the community, our health is so important. What are the long-term benefits? Obviously not just financially for the pocket, but for the environment and having zero energy, sustainable buildings.
I think it's important to think about future generations. So although we're making all this change now, it's really going to impact how our future generations deal with it. At the moment, we produce 70% of our energy in New Zealand through renewables, but our energy use is only going to go up in time with more, like a growing population and more people using more and more energy in their homes. So it's all about making energy efficient changes now so that we don't have that growth and we don't need to look at building more power stations or trying to put in more hydro dams in places, and obviously those impact the environment when they're put in.
You're obviously originally from the UK, and you've worked in a lot of amazing fields. You've worked with solar energy, you've worked in, is it aerodynamics? So can you tell us a little bit about your journey of your career?
I started off doing 2 master's degrees because I did my first master's and I came out of uni, and as an engineer it was quite difficult to get a job at that time, and I went back and specialised in aerodynamics. And then from that second master's I ended up getting a job in Formula 1.
Wow!
As one of the aerodynamicists, just doing computer modelling of the cars and working out how you can go faster in them, which was a very exciting place to be, but it's an entertainment job, and it wasn't really fulfilling my passion. I wanted to do something that was making change to the world and to people around me. And I realised that I really wanted to work in sustainable buildings. We're in buildings most of our lives. They have a big impact on us. So it's really important that they're designed really well. So from there I went into doing a little bit of structural engineering and sustainable design for a structural engineering company, and then a job with a company called Solar Century came up. And at the time they were the biggest provider of solar energy in the UK. And I ended up going to work for them for a year, which was an amazing job, surrounded by really like-minded people. And it was a time when there was lots of change going on in the UK with the solar industry, so it was just starting to grow very rapidly. And there I met my partner, who's from Auckland, and we ended up moving to Auckland after a year of me being in that job, and that's when I started working for Eat Cubed.
So now obviously there's been a bit of a movement in the UK, you know, towards greener, more energy efficient buildings. What are the differences you've noticed between, you know, the progress in this area between, you know, what's happening in Europe right now and happening in New Zealand?
There's been a lot of change in the UK, and I think a lot of that is because you see pollution every day. You're much more aware of climate change. It's in the newspapers every day. People are talking about it because they can see it. They can already see the effects. In New Zealand, we're very lucky. All of our countryside looks very clean and green at the moment. And although I know there's a lot of studies looking at our rivers that say they're not actually as clean as they look, you know, we've got a real opportunity in New Zealand to make the change up front before our environment does get affected, like it has been in the UK. You know, in the UK they've got energy shortages, they've got pollution in London, you know, it's very bad. Whereas over here, it's not quite there yet, but we've got an opportunity to prevent that from happening completely. And
it is starting to happen, you know, with pollution in rivers and lakes through farm runoff and lots of other factors.
Yeah.
So it's about having that awareness and preventing it, not looking out and going, oh, that's green grass, we're all very good and clean and green. Yeah. So again, it's taking that world view, that bigger picture view of, you know, changing the world through your, I don't know, your attitudes as well, because attitude is very important, isn't it?
Yeah. It's all about thinking about your children, really, thinking about what future generations are going to have to live in. I'd really love this country to stay the way it is. The environment is so beautiful out here. I want my daughter to see all of that. So
is innovation a big part of your work, or is it more around sort of smarter thinking approaches?
It's probably a mix of both. It depends really on the client. So in my job, I mostly work on commercial buildings, and if they're a client that's really looking to push the boundaries, then you have to innovate. And part of that innovating is being a leader in doing something. There's a lot of risk taking, doing something that's very new to New Zealand, and that's a really exciting area to be in. And you do actually find that those innovations work out, and they really have a big impact on the environment. And then, you know, there are also the smart thinking clients. You know, it's those little changes that have a little bit of impact, but you know, that's what the client can afford at that time. But it still has a big effect at the end.
So it's worth making even the small changes to make big changes.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just starting that ball rolling, you know. If people feel like they're just making small changes, they feel quite pleased about doing that, and they're more willing to take a little bit more risk and make a slightly bigger change next time.
So your company is doing some work down in the Wynyard Quarter in Auckland, downtown. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Waterfront Auckland are doing quite a lot of development down in the Wynyard Quarter, and they really see the benefit in doing something a little bit innovative and a little bit different. They've already designed that site to perform really well with stormwater, so there's lots of rain gardens down there, which create a beautiful green area for people to walk in. But they're also trying to push the boundaries a little bit with their buildings, so putting in solar panels to produce some energy on site, and also trying to push energy efficiency within the buildings and water efficiency. So they're really doing some interesting stuff, and it's mixed use development, so there's residential, offices and retail, and they're all going to have to achieve some level of sustainability down there.
Because when you look at the world view, I mean, a lot of cities are now starting to put in, growing living walls and solar panels. You've got community gardens in city centres. Because we've all become so reliant on supermarket shopping, we've forgotten how to grow vegetables. Everything's kind of, the power just, if the power suddenly goes, as we had recently with the power cut, so we do need to look at how to make our cities around the world more sustainable, don't we?
Yeah, and people often think of sustainability as being all about the environment, but it's also about how you live. So sustainability also means making you self-sufficient, so you can produce your own food, you've got access to fresh water, you've got access to free energy. It's about your quality of life as well. So if you have a look at Wynyard Quarter, they're doing lots of stuff on that. And also down in Christchurch, a lot of the new builds now, they're trying to encourage the people to buildings that are more resilient, so people don't have to worry, like if there's another kind of natural disaster, they've got something to live off, they've got some energy there, they've got water there, there's food for them, So it's also thinking about resilience, how it's more affordable for you in the long run.
And, because we've got such a great quality of life at the moment, And as you say, if that suddenly was cut off, you know, how would we cope? What would we do? And it's something we need to think about.
And also because cities are getting more dense, you know, people are living in smaller spaces, but it's really nice for them to have somewhere where they can grow their own fruit and veg, and it's really nice for them to have some green spaces to go and spend some time in.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you. That's been most enlightening, and your work is just so incredible.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.
If you'd like to hear more stories in our series, Change the World, Not Everyday Life, go to MiNDFOOD.com. There you will also have the chance to win an Audi A3 e-tron for a year. Check it out and see how you and the Audi A3 e-tron could be the perfect match.